The empire of evil has struck back in Brazil. Dark times are ahead. But should conservatives in America be worried about what we just saw? Stay tuned. What's up, guys? VinceDao here. Be sure to like and subscribe. So, sad times are upon the nation of Brazil as right-wing nationalist and Trump ally Jair Bolsonaro was defeated yesterday by far-left loonbag Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who we will conveniently refer to as Mr. L. There's no way to spin this. That's a terrible thing for that country. Brazil had one of the best leaders in the whole world, and now they're set to hand power to a corrupt left-wing scumbag. Today, we will talk a little bit about what happened in the election, what's next for the future of Brazil, and lastly, if there's any implications for conservatives in America. So the first thing I will say is this. For YouTube and legal purposes, I 100% do not suspect the CIA or any other entity of being involved in the Brazilian elections, nor do I believe that the CIA has ever been involved in any election, foreign or domestic, ever in history. It's never happened. Not even once, as we all know. What are you, some kind of conspiracy theorist? Gosh. And even hypothetically, if the CIA was involved, which they are not, they would definitely have our best interests in mind and would only be fortifying the true results of a free and fair election anyway. People think I'm being sarcastic. No, you're wrong. I'm serious. I am so serious. Please don't kill me. But outside of the things that we are not allowed to discuss on YouTube, which I would not do anyway, of course, I want to mention the fact that voting is mandatory in Brazil. Did you know that? You're forced to pay a tax penalty if you don't vote. And so, what happens with mandatory voting? Well, much like the expansion of mass mail-in voting, what happens is that people who normally would not care turn out to vote. Your average person who knows nothing and is barely invested is now voting. What is the natural consequence of that? Well, the obvious aspect is that stupid, uninformed people without any vested interest in a country are now making decisions for the country. But it's even worse when you consider the fact that, much like in America, because we export it, the prevailing culture in Brazil is liberal. The institutions, the culture, the narratives are liberal. And so what happens when you get all the NPCs who only know the culture to vote? You get exactly what you expect. Liberal politics. Which is why liberals in America constantly want to make it easier to vote, and why some progressives have even suggested making it mandatory to vote. Why? Is it for some virtuous reason? No, it's because they want stupid people to vote, because stupid people will vote for them. They know that the uninformed, apathetic masses will vote for the party of established stupidity. That's the truth. And so there are obviously other factors to discuss, but we should definitely take that into account when we look at these results. What would happen if Brazilian elections were not mandatory? The voting age in Brazil got lowered to 16 in 1988, by the way. Forgot to mention that. Very interesting, right? Raises questions of whether encouraging the uninformed, uninvested masses to make political decisions is a good idea. Just saying. Regardless, it is what it is. And we'll see what happens next. But assuming that Mr. L is the next president and, nothing happens on that front, very dark times are ahead for Brazil. There's no other way to put it. Because what are the type of problems that currently plague Brazil? It's very dangerous. There's a lot of crime. There's a lot of drugs. And there's a lot of poverty. And there's a lot of government corruption surrounding these things too, especially corruption around the organized crime. We all know this. Everyone knows this. Now, they just elected a former establishment politician. You fill in the rest. Brazil is also struggling with inflation, just like us, and it's being weakened by the same cultural progressivism that we know all about. Now, how do you think electing that Marxist scumbag is going to impact all of those issues? We all know, because we see it in our own country. Here's the other thing, though. Not to overuse this talking point, right? But Brazil is actually a place that the Chinese Communist Party is taking serious interest in. They certainly want economic influence within our hemisphere, of course, but there's even been talks of building a Chinese military base in Brazil for a few years now. Now, Bolsonaro was a strong nationalist. He would not allow foreign nations to take over his country. But how do you think this Lula guy is going to respond to that pressure? Do you think that that communist loser cares about the sovereignty of Brazil? Of course not. Of course he would be happy to sell out his nation to foreign influence. So keep an eye on that, because both the American regime and China got their guy for differing reasons. Interesting how that works, right? The Biden administration got their guy because he's a leftist, and China got their guy because he's a globalist. To me, this just spells total disaster on all sides, and it's very sad. Now, obviously, we have our own elections in a week. So I guess the question is, should conservatives look at this and be worried? Now, of course, there's a certain reason why we should always be worried. But in the sense that this is maybe a potential forecast for our midterms, I would say no. And here's why. First of all, it's just the obvious reason that Brazil is a different country with different people than us. Of course, we are not Brazil. Brazil is not us. But I would also say that this election was more of a lagging indicator than a leading indicator. What I mean by that is I think we basically just watched Brazil's version of the 2020 election, much like Bolsonaro's first election was their version of the 2016 election. Does that make sense? What you saw last Sunday was the anti-establishment, right-wing nationalist incumbent get taken down after they threw everything at him. COVID, economic downturn, social unrest, etc. And that was used as the pretense to oust the incumbent that most of the political class in that country doesn't like and did not expect to win in the first place. Sound familiar? Sound very familiar? It should. Meanwhile, in America, I think we are a few years ahead in that cycle. We are in the spot where the liberal establishment has already retaken power. They are making things far worse, and they are growing highly unpopular with the people. Keep that in mind. Bolsonaro was the incumbent, whereas Biden and his party are now the incumbents here. I know that this whole comparison is a little bit of a stretch, but you also have to see the genuine similarities. Bolsonaro basically is Brazilian Trump. And so I would say on one hand, besides the obvious factors, right? You don't need to be that worried because I don't think Brazil is foreshadowing us. I think if anything, it's the other way around. And pending the results of Tuesday and of 2024, we might see Bolsonaro and the nationalists resurge in a few years. But who knows? How does the story end? That's for you to decide. Next Tuesday, go vote. See what I did there? See what I did there? But we are praying in all seriousness for the Brazilian people. Assuming Bolsonaro doesn't do a little bit of trolling, it is going to be a pretty dark couple of years for Brazil. Like it or not, Bolsonaro was Brazil's best hope. And I know there's a lot of American conservatives who are scared to support the guy because our media calls him a dictator and maybe he's said some things about gay people in the past that you find to be too controversial. But man up, grow up, seriously. Trump supports the guy because he gets it. And you're too scared to do that because the media calls him a dictator? Gee, I wonder who else they call a dictator. Come on, dude. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And before we go, be sure to subscribe to the second channel that we started called VinceDao Clips. I'll put it in the description and the card on your screen. But again, that's VinceDao Clips. I'm going to use it to post a lot of the live stream clips that kind of get ignored after we finish the live. And maybe even some exclusive content on there too. So yeah, VinceDao Clips. Go subscribe. I appreciate it. All right. Until next time, Alpha Moves Only. God bless. Peace.